Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Dynamics GP Impact of Authentication Protocol Changes. My name is Tess, and I'm the facilitator today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the questions area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer those at the end. This session will be recorded and posted on our blog, as well as shared with you in a follow-up email. I'd like to introduce our presenters today, Don McNulty, who is a solutions architect on our Dynamics GP team, and Ryan Fiorini, who is a GP solution specialist on our client support services team. So Don, I'll pass it over to you.
All right, well, welcome everyone. So GP and the impact of the protocols. So we gotta go through a few things today just to make sure everybody's on the same page. What are they? Why are they important, of course? We're then going to go into what effect they have both on your email and on GP itself. And then next steps for people who are going to be impacted by this, what are we going to do next? So that's kind of the lay of the land. We'll try and get you out of here in about half an hour to 45 minutes, and then we'll go from there. So the protocols. So what are they? So what they are is originally Microsoft wrote SSL or Secure Socket Layer back in the 1990s. They then replaced it with TLS 1.0, which they ran since then. And then in the mid-2010s, they moved to TLS 1.2. TLS 1.2 is called the modern protocol versus the basic protocol, which is the 1.0. The issue that we have is that this has been around for about 4 or 5 years. A lot of programs have already embraced the 1.2, and now Exchange, which is where all the problems are coming from, is now saying we no longer are going to support backward compatibility behind 1.2. And they're doing this because of the amount of security holes there are in TLS 1.0. So they're making their servers more secure. They want to stop people from hacking into them. So as a result, they're saying, thou shalt use this. As a result of that, what happens is that things are affected. Anybody who's running on 1.0 type code is going to require either an upgrade or a change into the 1.2 code. You know, the why now? Well, why now is because Exchange and Office 365, which is what most of us are using for our email, is mandating it across all programs. So it's not just Great Plains that's affected, it's any program that's using TLS 1.0 will be affected by this particular change. And this change is happening between now and October of 2022, according to Microsoft. Between now and then, they are going to be testing this protocol change by turning off 1.1 for specific instances of your Exchange servers on an ongoing basis. And on a rotating basis. They'll be off for 48 hours, then they'll go back on again. And then in October, it's going to go permanently off. So what are the effects of it? So what effects does it have, and how does it affect your system? So what we have is we have two systems that we have to worry about. It affects the email, the SMTP, as well as the Outlook, and Office 365. It also affects GP systems. Now, email, Office 365 has been compliant with 1.2 since version, I believe it's 2016. So Outlook 2016 and better will handle the 1.2 TLS. So we don't have an issue talking with Outlook, which is why your Outlook is not going to be affected. SMTP, Simple Message Transport Protocol. What that does is that allows us to do things like workflow and things like that. That has been affected in that we need to make sure that that particular protocol has been updated as well. Now, Office 365 has done all of this. It's all ready to go, and they're actually in the process of just turning off the old 1.0 because they allowed both to happen. GP. Well, GP's being a part of Microsoft has known about this for a number of years, but did not finish their upgrade to 1.3 until 18.3, which was released in 2021, I believe it was. Oh, no, sorry, 2020. So it's been 2 years since it was released. And so this will affect any version of GP that is older than 18.3. If you have 18.3 or 18.4, which are the two above it, if you have either of those, this is not an issue. In other words, GP handles the 1.2 protocol, everything works fine, nothing has to change. If you are not on those, if you're on an older one, what gets affected? Inside GP, only two things use this. One is the email of documents using GP. So if you're using the Exchange interface with your Great Plains, it will be affected and your emails will stop working. Workflow uses SMTP in order to send its information out, so that when you get emails to say, oh, you've got to go and approve this, or here's the document, can you please approve it? That's all done through SMTP. That also will stop working because before 18.3, it was using TLS 1.0. So we need to be concerned about that. Next steps. This is the interesting part. All right. We have to break this into two pieces. Sorry about that, I just sneezed. Documents to customers and vendors. These are sales invoices, sales statements, orders, packing slips, the like, things that you send out to that you email your invoices out to your customers. It also includes your remittance advices, and it includes your purchase orders if you happen to be using those inside on your vendor side. Basically, we have 2 or 3 different fixes. The first one, and the one that we recommend, is that you should upgrade to 18.3. That way you don't have to change anything at all inside your GP outside of upgrading to the newest version, which is a good place to go. Once you're there, everything will continue to work as it does today, and there'll be no change, no training, no change that's required. The problem with that is that if you need your emails and you're having problems with them already, because we're seeing some people having problems with them, this puts you on a rapid path to an upgrade, which is fine, but we should be looking at that as the overall solution. Second option is, so that particular option is good for both documents and the workflow, okay? On the document side, we can also change to MAPI. So we can change our connectivity to GP, from GP to the Office 365, to take it away from working directly with Exchange and push it back to what they call MAPI. And MAPI would then force that user to have Outlook loaded and running. And when they have that running, then they would be able to send emails and it would go through Outlook. The issue with sending it through Outlook is that if I'm sending 50 invoices, it's going to come up with 50 messages that say, are you sure you want to send this? Are you sure you want to send this? Are you sure you want to send this? And you have to hit yes on each one. So there is a piece of software called Click Yes Pro, which you can add to your system. And that allows you to have a programmatically click the yes button as Outlook says, are you sure you want to send this? And the reason that Microsoft has that feature inside Outlook is to stop the email viruses from being able to activate and send emails to all of your contacts. So that's the other one. Another one that we have found, which I did put some information on the resource page, is that there is a product that's been around for a while called Liaison Messenger EDD. And Liaison Messenger is a product that allows you to send emails directly to Office 365. It allows you to set them up and have them delay and things like that. There's lots of features in it. But one of the things that it does do is that it does support TLS 1.2. So you can move to it, and then it would then continue to run. And it works on all versions of GP from, I believe it's GP 2015 and above. So there is some setup time that's required in order to set it up properly. It also requires a workstation to run the print driver. It runs through a print driver, and you send your standard print jobs through this, and then it will email them out to the individuals. Works very well, but does have a cost associated with it. For up to 10 users, it's about $3,000 plus maintenance, as well as, and there's also a user count that's up to 10 users. If you need more, there are additional costs associated. So it's something to think about if you're in a bind and you can't or don't want to upgrade. But we believe that upgrade is the best thing. On the workflow, we're a little bit more restricted. There's no workaround past October. Okay, nothing will change the fact that this particular feature will cease to operate in October of 2022. The temporary fix for it is that you can go in, and as I mentioned to you earlier, Exchange is currently turning off TLS 1.0 on a rotating basis through all of its clients. You can actually force them not to do that by turning off the modern authentication in Office 365 for this. I'll get Ryan potentially to talk about that in a couple of minutes when I'm done. So that's what we're looking at from a fixed point of view. Okay. Other options. There's liaison binary stream. That one uses MAPI. That's just that's another one that works for MAPI. And workflow. You can continue to use workflow if you use it internal to GP only. What by that I mean, you would have to go into GP to see whether or not you needed to approve something, and you could approve it inside GP. I do this for my demos. I show it. That's how I show it in my demos. So I do know this works very well. It does not require an Exchange server. It does not require access to anything like that. There are no notifications sent to you, so you don't know that anything's there. So it would be the person's responsibility to go into GP and check. And all approvals would then be done inside GP. Big disadvantage of this particular feature of doing it this way is two things. One, you don't know if there's anything to do, so you have to go into GP to check. And two, it requires that the approver be a user in GP. And I have a lot of people running workflow who their approvers do not have access to GP because they don't want to buy more user licenses, which can be quite expensive. I think they're $3,700 Canadian, $3,000 US per user. So that becomes a challenge that some people go, well, I don't want to spend. That's a lot of money to spend on software that I don't really need. So there they are. Okay. All right. So there were a couple of questions right off the bat. Ryan, do you want to talk a bit about turning off the modern authentication?
Yeah, so one fix that we have to ensure that earlier versions of GP will continue to work is updating the dynamics.exe.config file, which is it's going to be located in your code folder, but we just have to add 3 lines of code to that, or one real line. 1 line of code, and then save the file. And what this does, it'll ensure that the application is using TLS 1.2 wherever it's available as part of the move towards modern. So that's probably the simplest way to fix the email as a temporary solution. Again, that's only going to work until October, when Microsoft permanently disables it. Past that, as Don mentioned, we'll have to upgrade to 18.3, or we'll have to change over to MAPI, which involves, it's usually about 30 to 45 minutes per workstation setup. But it involves installing a 32-bit application of Microsoft Office and Outlook, reverting GP or changing the system preferences from Exchange to MAPI configuration. And then instead of, when you go to email, it will open up an Outlook window pre-filled with whatever email templates you have, and then it'll send that way rather than connecting to the Exchange server. The one of the difficulties with this is I know that IT guys typically don't like is that every user has to have their individual profile set up on Outlook in order for that to work if you have multiple users on that same workstation. That's kind of one of the biggest hiccups there. But if you're just setting up one or two users, then it's really not that difficult of a workaround.
Okay. Okay. Now, Tess, you had some questions?
Yeah, there's one that came in relation to what Ryan was just saying, and it is, can you share those 3 lines of code for the Dynamics exe config file?
I think we've got them in the resource page. Let me just.
Yeah, I sure can. I can paste them in there.
We can add it to the follow-up if it's not in the resources section.
Yeah, we'll make sure we'll put it in the resource section for the follow-up. So the resources that I've got listed on the screen right now, these are kind of where it came from. The Exchange Tech announcement in February of 2021 and June of 2021 and September of 2021. That was Exchange Tech saying, you need to do this because we're going to shut it down. This is what got into the hands of the GP people, and we're going, okay, we need to work on this. I wrote a blog for it, and that's where you'll find that. This is where this will be posted when this is all done. At the top, we've added the Click Yes Pro in case you need, if you're looking at the MAPI solution, so you don't have to hit the yes button. And I've also added the liaison link if you wanted to take a look at that as a possible option. I believe in the Encore blog, we may have links to the fix that Ryan talked about as well. If we don't, we will make sure that it gets added. So, okay.
Thanks, Don. The next question is, will all versions of Outlook and Exchange be affected when emailing from GP older than 18.3?
It will. The Outlook versus GP. So if you're on a version of GP that is older than 18.3, and you decide to do the MAPI route, then the 2 things you need on the MAPI side is that you must have an Outlook client that is 32-bit, as Ryan said, and you must be on Office, I believe it's 2016 or better. So if you're on Office 2010 still, then you'll need to upgrade your Office because that Office also doesn't support 1.2, but you would have to do that anyway because it's going to stop your Outlook from working. So assuming that you've got a working Outlook at Office 2016 or better, which most people do, as long as it's a 32-bit on the same machine as what you're running GP on, you're good to go. You can do that with the MAPI. As Ryan mentioned, the IT guys don't like it because what happens is that if I'm running on an RDS server with 35 people, I have to put 35 separate profiles on there, each one with a full Outlook implementation, which takes up a lot of space, backup, and resources. So there's a lot of pushback from the IT people saying, no, we'd rather not do that because of the costs involved with doing that. You need to do this for each person must have their own one. So if you've got 35 people, you have to do this 35 times. So somebody has to go in and set up Outlook 35 times, one for each person that is there. So that's the drawback to it. Also, it may require that they unload and reload Office because they may have already gone to the 64-bit Office, which does not work with MAPI. So the only drawback to the 32-bit version of Office over the 64-bit version of Office is the number of rows that you can put in Exchange. It reduces the number to, I think, 1 million from 10 billion. So it's just, most people don't notice, but that's the biggest drawback to the 32 to 64-bit. Okay.
Thanks, Don. The next question is, if using SalesPad to email an invoice, will that work or not?
That's a really good question, and one that I have not asked SalesPad. The answer is if they use if they're using GP technology to email, in other words, they're sending it through the GP exchange, then the same rules that I've been talking about would occur. If they have their own link directly to Exchange, they may have already written it like Liaison has to be 1.2 compatible. I have not asked SalesPad that question, but I will take that as a piece, and we will post it with this document. I'll put it in the resources.
Sounds good. Next question is, with MAPI, do you have to explicitly establish trusted add-in communication between GP and Outlook?
Yes, it does it automatically for you as you start to use it. When you first try to use it, it tries to fire up Outlook. It will use your Windows login that you're logged. So when you go into Dynamics, the first thing you do is you log into your network. That network login is the login that is used to open up Outlook. So it knows what that is when you go into GP. When you go into GP, you then enter a SQL user, and you're into GP as a SQL user, but you are still logged into the domain as a Windows user. That Windows user, when I fire up an email with MAPI, will automatically try to launch Outlook for that Windows user, which is why you need to do it for every single person. When it does that, it will not work if it hasn't been set up. It triggers the setup screens in the back, and then it hangs. So you have to have this done in advance, otherwise it just hangs that particular session of GP. You have to get out and set it up and then come back. But so that's the trusted relationship, is that you're already trusted on the domain because you are a domain user before you log into GP. That is the same user rights that are used for SSRS reports as well as for Excel reports. Okay.
Sounds good. Next question is, we're on GP version 16. What do we need to do to be prepared for the update and not be adversely affected?
Okay, so to upgrade, from 16 will require 2 hops. We'll go from 16 to 18 and then 18 to 18.4. We may, depending on the service pack that you're running on 2016, you may be able to do it in a single hop, but I'd have to check. So that's the first one. Other than that, it's just a matter of planning it out. Do you have third parties? If you've got third parties, you need to make sure that you've got the software for the third parties as well as the regular, and they all support 18.3. We would jump you all the way to 18.4. We would not stop at 18.3. 18.4 is the newest one, so we will bypass that one. And we can go from 18 to 18.4 in one step. I'm not sure we can go from 16 to 18.4 in one step or not. But that would be something we could check. I think it has to do with what service pack you're on in 2016. Timing wise, ordinarily what we do with the larger upgrades like 16 and up, what we would do is we would do a quick test upgrade and then run it through, make sure all the data converted fine, and then do it in a live environment. It usually runs somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000 bucks. Okay.
Thank you. The next question is, can I update on my own?
Can you update on your own? Yes, as long as you remember to do all the pieces. There's nothing to stop a user from doing it themselves. We have a number of our clients do it themselves. The things that you need to watch out for is you have to watch out for all your third parties and make sure you've got them all in place. And, you know, I will say one thing that there are 3 things you need to do. You need to back up, and back up. So make sure you've got backups and you're good to go.
Thanks, Don. The next question is asking if they are using MAPI or not. So it says in email preferences,
yes.
Server type exchange is selected, but when emailing invoices, they are sent from the user's Outlook. Are we using MAPI or not?
If the user preferences says Exchange, are you using binary stream or are you using something else to email? Or are you using GP? That's the first question. If you're using straight GP with the Word document going out, if it says Exchange in the preferences, then when you first try and send one, you get an Exchange login. That's the piece that fails. So when you're set to Exchange, as soon as you try and do an email function in GP the first time in the day, it comes up with a username and password box that you have to enter in your password. The username defaults to, you need to enter your Windows user, i.e. Don McNulty at encorebusiness.com, followed by my password, which gets me, that authenticates me to Exchange. At that point, it then sends things through Exchange. So that would be, but if you're not getting that and it's popping up Outlook and asking you yes, 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 then you are using MAPI. But if it says Exchange on the preferences, you are using the Exchange version.
Yeah, I think if the user, if an Outlook window is opening and their server type or server preferences are set to Exchange, that they're probably, it's probably not being emailed from GP. It's probably using, like you said, binary streams or another module.
Yeah.
But that module would be then using MAPI, I believe, right? I mean, if it's opening the Outlook window.
Yeah. That is correct.
The next question is, what would be the alternatives that we can take to solve the problem with the workflow?
Outside of upgrade, we have not found a permanent workaround. It will stop. The only thing we can do on the workflow is to run that Dynamics config file, turn off the modern protocol so that it only uses the one that it supports. And that will work until Exchange decides to turn everything off in October. So as of October, it will stop working, period. I have yet to find a workaround for it because it's outside of rewriting the workflow engine from a customization point of view. There is no real solution to the workflow that I'm aware of. I am continually looking for that just so that we can try and work around it, but that is something that we cannot at this time do.
Thanks, Don. Next question is, if a user was emailing using basic authentication enabled in 18.2 and it is still working after upgrading to 18.4, will it need to be addressed sooner than later?
As you upgrade from 18.2 to 18.4, you automatically move GP from TLS1 to TLS 1.2. That's part of that upgrade. It's part of the 18.3 upgrade, which is part of the 18.4. So by making yourself beyond 18.3, as soon as you get to 18.4, it no longer uses TLS 1.0. It uses nothing but TLS 1.2. That's part of the upgrade software.
Will they need, when they go to modern like that, though, will they have to enable multi-factor authentication on the Office side in order for that to work?
They will not need to. They can continue to use the same piece, although it's recommended. We recommend the multi-factor, but because it's safer, but it's not mandatory.
Okay. It's
always a recommendation. Multi-factor allows you to have tell your cell phone and things like that you've logged in and things like that. It's seamless without it. With the MFA, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done if you want to turn on MFA. So, but just the fact of moving to 18.3 or better, the embedded code that is in Dynamics uses TLS 1.2 instead of TLS 1.0 as of 18.3.
Thanks, Don. The next question is, our partner says that this upgrade only affects Exchange Online. We're on GP16 and have the Outlook pop-up window. What is correct?
You have the outlet. Well, if you've got if you have a local Exchange server, then it will depend on the version of Exchange that you're running locally. So if you're running an Exchange, say Exchange 2016, then it will continue to operate the same way, and that you're then authenticating using TLS 1.0. If you upgrade your Exchange to a new version of Exchange, which I don't even think they make anymore, I'm not sure, I don't deal a lot with Exchange from that point of view, is if you would upgrade to the newest version of Exchange, if there was one that did not support 1.0, then that would then start to break exactly the same way that it's breaking on Office 365. Office 365, the online version of Exchange, is strictly just an Exchange server in the cloud that Microsoft runs. They're controlling what goes on as to when the upgrades and things happen. They are moving their system so that it only supports 1.2. That is why this is happening. So if you've got an Exchange server and you've got an old school Exchange server from say 2012 or 2016, that will continue to operate as long as you continue to run your Exchange server on the local machine. Now you are subject, of course, to the security flaws that 1.0 has, so you have to be careful about that, and your IT department is probably going to want to move from that at some point in order to because there are some vulnerabilities that with 1.0 that have been used by hackers in the past. That's why they're moving.
They're on Exchange 2013.
Yeah, so 2013 will be fine. As long as you keep running on Exchange 2013, everything will work normal with 2016. It's not work up. We'll have TLS 1.0 will work fine. You can keep using the Exchange. As soon as you try to upgrade that Exchange to a newer version, I don't know whether they're like 2019 or 2020 or whatever the newest one is, chances are it's going to start to break. Because as Exchange comes out, Office 365 is the first place that they're going to do it, and then they'll do it to the Exchange, to anybody who's got on-prem Exchange. As I said, I'm not even sure you can buy on-prem Exchange anymore, but I don't know. I haven't been following it that closely on the Exchange side.
Great, thanks, Dawn and Ryan. That is all the questions that I have seen come in.
Okay.
So we'll give about 30 more seconds and then.
To add, Ryan?
Yeah, anything to add?
Yeah, just one thing. Some of you may not have ran into this yet. As we've said, it's been intermittent, until it's permanently disabled, widespread in October. Sometimes though, these errors, like Don was talking about, where users are being repeatedly prompted for Exchange credentials, those errors are the exact same errors that are caused by some very basic problems in the past. So if you have just one user who's running into this, it may not be the authentication protocols issue that you're running into. But if all of a sudden it was working last week or the day before, and now it's not working anymore, you're running into the authentication protocol issue. But if it's just a user, give us a call and we'll just do some, make sure that you got the server type set up right, that they're, it may be that auto discovery didn't pick up their email address and add it to the email master table. But there are a few basic things that we can eliminate very quickly, to confirm that it isn't the email issue.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. No other questions have come in. So thank you, Dawn and Ryan, for the information, and thank you to everyone for submitting your questions and joining us today. I think we'll wrap up, and I will follow up with the resources and a link to this recording. And have a great rest of your day.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.